Now we're ready to begin finalizing the animation. Before we begin smoothing out our character's motion, we have a few things to do, and for one, we need to basically go through the animation and make sure we can or see if we can adjust any of the timing at which our actions are occurring. And we definitely can, especially in this beginning part of the animation. Okay, where the character goes from moving up, having his hands on the handle, to where he pulls. We're actually going to want to allot a little bit more time in here so that the character can go into an anticipation pose before he actually pulls back on the crate. And anticipation is one of those essential principles of animation we want to make sure we have in our animations, because we humans too do move in anticipation. Therefore, our characters must as well, if we are to create a believable end product. So keeping that in mind, what we're going to do is basically give ourselves, again, a little bit more time here to add anticipation. So let's go ahead and go to frame 20, and we'll shift select this key, or shift and left mouse button. And while holding shift and the left mouse button, let's click and drag all the way to a little bit past frame 50. So we can have the keys from frames 20 all the way to 50 in our selection. And once we have them in our selection, now we can go ahead and move them around by going to the center of our selection where these arrows are, and left mouse button clicking and dragging. Okay, and we'll drag to the right about 5 frames. So now our first frame here now lies on frames 25, and this last frame lies on 55. Great, so now we have some space in here to add some, again, anticipation, and we're not going to do that just yet. We'll wait a little bit after, when we have smoothed out the character's body, the motion of it. Okay, so that's that. And now what we want to do is basically set some more keys on our character's feet so they'll be planted where we need them to be during the smoothed out phase, and that's going to help when it comes to animating the steps. Okay, it's going to make our job a little bit easier. But right now, if we were to, let's say, go into our perspective and graph view by selecting this icon here to get to our graph editor, and if you don't use a graph editor when you animate, you definitely have to, because it's a great help. Okay, this is where I spend most, if not all, of my time when animating. So we get to our character set, and once we select that in the graph editor outliner, let's go ahead and flatten our tangency. And the flattened tangency is what we're going to use once we begin smoothing out our animation. Okay, so, and by the way, we're not going to leave it flat. We are going to adjust the tangency so we can get the correct timing and spacing. But for our default in and out tangency, we will again use flat. But if we go ahead and switch to flat, check out the feet. Notice what happens when we scrub back and forth. They're just sliding all over the place. They're not staying planted where we want them to be in our blocking out phase. So let's go ahead and work on that. We'll bring our keys back to stepped. And once we've done that, we'll go to our perspective, go to the bring back our control curves, the visibility of them. And let's start with our right foot. We can get our right knee selected and our right foot control in that order so we can get to our foot control channels. Okay, and okay, so the right foot moves up on frame 10, and we want it still planted on frame 25, and we weren't getting that before. Okay, and then it moves back on frame 35. So let's go to frame 25 and just press Shift W to key our translate values to lock the foot there, and then we'll also key our heel pivot channel. Let's get that keyed so that the foot will be totally planted also in that channel as well, and then it moves back like so. And we also want that foot planted from frames 35 to 45. So by 55, around this time it'll shift. So we'll go to frame 45 and basically again press Shift W and also key our heel pivot so that the foot will be planted from frames 35 to 45 like we want it to be, and then shift over afterwards. Excellent. Now we can work on that left foot. Okay, so let's go ahead and select the left foot or the left knee and then the left foot in that order. Again, so we could get to our foot control channels. And what we'll do here is also on frame 25, we want the foot to be planted, but we also want it planted all the way until about 35. Okay, so rather than keying on 25 and basically adding excess keys, we could just go to frame 35, and on that frame we'll press Shift W to lock the foot there, and also key the heel pivot channel. There we go, so that's keyed. And then the left foot comes back, on frame 45. Alright, great. So once we have these set, now watch what happens. If we go ahead and we can deselect our controls, go back to our perspective and graph view, and with our character set selected, if we now flatten our tangency, watch what we get. Focusing in on our perspective, now we have our feet planted where we want them to be as we initially set them to be, and of course they're sliding around, but we just made our task for when it comes time to animating our footsteps and such a little bit easier by doing this task. Great. So once we have these things down, we're now ready to switch our tangency over. So let's go to our animation preferences to the right hand corner of the screen, and we'll go to the animation category and we'll switch it to flat tangency on both our default in and out and hit save. Excellent. Now just before we begin focusing on now our smooth animation, what we want to do is just spend the time and see if we could get rid of as many distractions as we can out of our scene. Okay, and this is so we could just focus on getting some nice fluidity in the animation as well as speed up our workflow. Now how are we going to do that? Well, we'll do that simply by hiding the legs. Now you may be wondering why. Well, again, for the above reasons, so we can just focus on getting the upper body down. Okay, just getting the nice fluidity there, and once we have that pretty much finished up, then we'll go back and animate the legs and then go back to the upper body and add the shifts in it based off of our footsteps. And this is also so that the animation won't seem too overwhelming by animating the whole body at the same time. Okay, so this is going to be of much help, and it may seem a little bit awkward at first, but you may or you should just even get used to it and enjoy it. Because I tell you that from personal experience. So let's go ahead and select the global control, and once we do, we have these channels here to hide certain parts of our character's body, and we want to get rid of the legs, so we could just highlight these two channels here, the right leg and the left leg, and put in values of 0. And now they're hidden. So with these things done, we could just focus now on animating the upper body, this section, and we'll bring more of our focus to it starting in the next lesson.